Today on my channel, I am starting a new series and it's going to be called... So I do a lot of sewing and creating things that I don't actually film and put on my YouTube channel, either because I'm just making alterations or trying something new, or I'm making something which requires a lot of specialized equipment like an overlocker. But I thought that it might actually be fun to start filming some of this sewing that I do, because while you might not have all the equipment necessary, or some of the things I do might not be that simple, you might be able to pick up some tips or tricks or things that you might want to purchase in the future. So without further ado, this is the thing that I made today. And I want you to all join me as I make it. So I started out with this old crop top whose pattern I want to copy because I like the fit of it, and some pink stretchy fabric. I then folded the crop top exactly in half and I placed it on the fabric's fold. Then, using a washable fabric marker, I traced around this half of the top, adding a small seam allowance about 1/2 inch all the way around. So I didn't trace out the sleeves here, I'm actually going to trace where the shoulder seam is instead. To do this, I'm using a curved ruler. Now the curve of the ruler matches the shoulder seam perfectly, so I used it to trace out the shoulder. It's kind of hard to see the pen here, so with the help of some computer graphics, this is what I just drew onto my fabric. Then I just cut it out, and then I used this same piece to trace and cut another shirt piece, so that I ended up with 2 identical pieces. One will make up the front of the t-shirt and the other will be the back. Next up is making a pattern for the sleeves. I placed the sleeve onto the fabric fold, with the stretch going in the opposite direction this time. I traced all the way around the sleeve, leaving about 1/2 inch of a seam allowance again. And then I used a curved ruler again to trace out that shoulder seam. So then I cut this out, used it as a template for another sleeve piece, then I unfolded both of them, and here are my 2 sleeve pieces. Then, just to make my garment look all professional, I overlooked the edges of the sleeves and the front and the back of the top like this. Overlockers are amazing, but if you don't have one, this is not a necessary step, it's just to make things look nice. Then I placed these 2 top pieces right sides together. So I started sewing them together using a zigzag stitch, and wait, why am I doing this when I have an overlocker? So I used the overlocker to serge the 2 pieces together instead. Now this clip hasn't been sped up at all. This is literally how fast it is when using an overlocker. Overlockers! Seriously though, I love my overlocker. I then tried on the top for size, and gotta say it's looking pretty sexy at this point. So the next step was to hem both the neckline and the bottom of the top. Now if you remember from before, these were the raw edges that I overlocked. To both the neckline and the bottom edges of the top, I folded them up inside the top about 1/2 inch. Then I sewed over the top of them using a zigzag stitch, with a piece of paper underneath to prevent ruffling. I ripped the paper off when I was done, and this is what the hem looks like. Then it was time to sew on the sleeves. So I matched up the sleeve and the top's shoulder seams right sides together, just like this, and I pinned the sleeve on all the way around the armhole. Then I sewed the 2 together carefully using a zigzag stitch. And this is what it looks like. I repeated this for the other sleeve, and that's the top finished. Now this is the first stretchy t-shirt that I've ever successfully made, and I have to say that I'm pretty pleased with how it's turned out. I did have a bit of ruffling going on at the hem, and I think fiddling around with my overlocker settings or getting a walking foot for my machine would help me to make better t-shirts in the future. So I'd love to hear your feedback about this potential new series. And don't worry, Make Thrift Buy isn't going anywhere. It's still my favorite series to make. And I also want to make this a space where you can share tips and tricks of your own with me. If you have a better method for doing something, then let me know. And yeah, that's it. I'll see you all for my next video. Bye!